the May 13th Addison Central School District School Board meeting to order. Mary Heather, could you start us out with introductions?
Sure, Mary Heather Noble.
Ellen Wheeler-Weiss.
Ryan Bauer.
Joanna Dorian.
Sophia Rohan.
Suzanne Bowe.
Tricia Allen.
Steve Orzak. Jason Jim.
Chip Malcolm.
Barb Wilson.
Sam Williams.
Matt Correnti, Director of Finance and Operations.
And in the room,
Courtney Cron, Director of Teaching and Learning.
Nicole Carter, Assistant Superintendent, Equity and Student Services. Wendy Baker in Coding.
excellent, thank you so much. At this time, we have public comments on agenda items. And Matt, can you check to see?
Barb, we need to adopt the agenda.
I am so sorry, habits die hard. Thank you so much, thank you so much.
I'd like to move to adopt the agenda as ordered.
I'll second.
Okay, if I hear sorry, I lost my objection, the agenda is approved as warned. Okay, it's approved. Next, public comments on agenda items. This is our moment. We invite the public to comment on our agenda items only. For those who would like to speak on other items, there's another agenda item later in the meeting. There is no public in the room. Is there any public attending? Okay, just Kurt. So therefore, we'll move on. The next agenda item is recommendation to approve the April 22nd meeting minutes.
I'll move that.
And a second?
I'm sorry.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I should have abstained.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So the minutes have been approved. ACSD bills. I'm going to turn it over to Chip.
Yeah, those were read on the 30th of April, the only time since the last meeting. There were two payroll warrants, one for $930,948.60, and another one for $1,606.98. And the general fund warrant was for $1,093,619.08. Of that number, let's see. Of that number, health and dental made up almost $370,000, and transportation made up $147,000. So I the motion to pay the bills.
A second?
I'm sorry.
Any discussion, any questions? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes, please indicate by saying aye. The bills? Oh, God. What's going on tonight? Too much outside too much today, weeding and mulching. Any abstention, any objections? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes have been approved.
Bills have been.
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry.
You're fixated.
I am fixated. I am so sorry. I'll do better, maybe. Okay, next, we have reported the student representative, and we have Sophia here. Do you have anything to share with us today?
We had our junior prom, which I think it was good. I wasn't there, but I think it was good. I heard it was good.
Oh, we
Yeah,
saw
everybody looked really good.
Yeah, lots of great pictures.
Yeah. And we're having spring fling soon, so there's gonna be lots of games and jazz band's gonna play. We're gonna have some singers from our choir, and Old Volunteers gonna have a cornhole tournament, very competitive. So that's gonna be fun, and yeah, that's all.
Okay. Any questions? Mary Heather and then Jason.
It's not so much a question, it's
Or a
something I just
comment.
wanted to point out. The Career Center had its National Technical Honor Society ceremony and honored a bunch of students, including Sophia. Sophia, and just want to celebrate that.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that if you haven't had a chance to see the girls lacrosse team and Sophia play, you're having a phenomenal season. So
Woo. Excellent, thank you. Tricia.
And I'll just put it, moving away from the high school, sorry. We are currently in the midst of Keep Week for fifth graders. Some of the elementary schools have happened, some are there currently, and it's that time of year. So a bunch of fifth graders having fun outdoors for a week.
Awesome, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Next, we have reported the superintendent. I will turn it over to Dr. Williams.
I have a couple items I'd like to share tonight before we get to the personnel section. And ask Matt to bring up the written report that's in board pack. You can scroll to the table. Just recently, the U.S. News and World Report released its rankings of schools across the country and by state. And our high school, Newbury Union High School, fared very well in the rankings. And fourth overall in the state, and nationally 2645, I think. No, that's for college readiness. 1893, yeah, thank you. And the factors that went into the number 4 ranking in the state are listed there in that table. And you can see in some areas very strong, in others there's, as we like to say, opportunities for improvement. The graduation rate being one of those opportunities for improvement, and that is a goal that the high school is working on, and I do expect that that's going to improve in the years ahead. It's not a one-year fix, it's a multi-year fix. It takes time to make that change and make that movement. The strongest category was college curriculum breadth and index rank. They have a methodology for ranking schools, so that's a tribute to what's going on curriculum-wise. And one thing that's really important to keep in mind, that this is a recognition for the high school, but they don't all of a sudden get a good education starting in 9th grade. It's a long, long process. It starts pre-K. So let's always keep that in mind, because they're not ranking other schools other than high schools. So when you have an achievement like this, you have to look at the whole organization, what it does to contribute to that. So that's very significant. So they should all be very proud of that. Next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is another table on the written report that talks about poverty rates, particularly as it impacts. Holly was just on.
Yeah. I was on Zoom, but now.
Okay, cool. The state provided this information to us for fiscal year 25, the right-hand column, and you can see there's a significant difference in the poverty rates from FY25 to the current year. It's most largely due to the way the food services software reported out the data. And there was a glitch in there, a problem in the programming of the software that's been fixed, and consequently more accurate numbers going out to the state and then to the feds. So you can see significant changes there from last year to this year. The really important thing to keep in mind is that these numbers now allow us to use Title I funds, for example, in a school-wide approach, as opposed to targeted approach, gives you much more flexibility to address student needs. Because some kids who really need some extra services wouldn't qualify if you were in a targeted situation. But when you're in a school-wide situation, you are able to use those funds to help those students be more successful. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. That the question I often get is, will that impact our fund? Answer is, I don't know, but I assume so. We should see improved increased funding for that going forward. To me, the big thing is that you can now be school-wide in your approach as opposed to targeted. That's huge when you're trying to meet the needs of all students. So that's a very good thing. Any questions about those two?
Okay, we
Wow.
have a bunch of questions. I'm gonna start with Chip, and we're gonna just go down the line because everybody raised their hand at the same time.
We talked about this in the past because I was always suspicious that in fact meaning us, that receive whatever data we're gonna receive that may affect funding, that there was either discrepancies or because it was a volunteer, food service type of thing, that would make sense in the past, but since food then became not that, it seemed to be, how can you collect that data on a volunteer basis and think that it's be accurate? The other thing that I looked at this chart and I found it unbelievably different town to town. All of us have a concept of certain towns in certain ways than others, but some of these are just unbelievable, I think. So I'm still, even though it may help our funding, I'm still very suspicious of it. I'm sorry, I just am. And I wish I wasn't that way, but this seemed to be so far off from what it was that it just struck me as, I can't be.
Well, anecdotally, I can tell you, like Salisbury, for example, Yarkey with 47%, we always say that can't be right. That can't be right. I know it's way higher than that. And from that standpoint, he was correct. If these new numbers are accurate, I understand the skepticism.
One thing that I was chatting with Courtney about regarding the amount of title funds is that they follow a different metrics of this count determines eligibility, but the 10-year census is what's used for determining the allotment of money. And so it's the same amount of frosting, but bigger cake.
And the updated numbers are due to a glitch that we uncovered, but also due to a new way that the state is using called direct certification to come up with these numbers. So it's not just a total shift in student population, it's also a shift in how they're configuring poverty levels.
You have it defining.
Yeah, so now they're, because of free and reduced lunch forms becoming a less accurate predictor, I wouldn't be able to list all of the different data points that they're using, but the state basically asks us to report out to them lots of different data points that we hold in our system, and then they clarify those data points with organizations like Dr. Dinosaur or Medicaid or, and the list goes on and on. They certify those and then they send them back to us. And it was our Mosaic software that wasn't updating the data that the state was pulling. So it's two things going on, the glitch and also a new process that districts around us are also experiencing. So.
Ryan.
And Tim, I would like to understand, when I look at bid work, what 90.5% means in terms of poverty rate. Is that the number? Is that the percentage of kids?
Percentage of the total population.
Really? Thank you.
I believe it's 128% of the federal poverty level, at or below.
What was that?
128% of the federal poverty level.
Okay, who had their hands up over here? Okay, Joanna.
I was thinking back to the school-wide versus targeted, and you clarified the differences. How does this apply to any summer programming that might be offered?
It would. I don't know that we've been using federal dollars for summer program. We could, but the federal dollars we'd be using for school year stuff.
Okay. So, when there is, so just a follow-up question, if that's okay. I know that there is, in the budget built in for each school, what is that coming from? Just the general.
You talking about, you're asking about summer school? Right now, using leftover ESSER funds this coming year. So a plan would have to be developed if that's to continue. And we talked about that a little bit. That was actually today, wasn't it? Yeah. We talked a little bit about that idea for what we'll do in the future. And we've got a bunch of different programs that are going to be developed for this coming year. And we talked about ways to look at data, student progress for those who attend those programs, and looking for the best solution for summer programming. Maybe adopting that for any building where we would do it. So we're looking at the programs and the results of those programs to see which one had the best impact on student achievement, and perhaps using that as a model for future programs. Finding the money for it, then that would be fiscal year 26, because we started after July 1. So we don't have to worry about funds being budgeted or not budgeted for this coming year. Because if you dictate that the program starts July 1 and after, which almost all of them do, I think one of them starts a week before July 1 this year. So you can build that into FY26 budget, the funding for summer programming. If that makes any sense.
Ellen, did you have a question? I think your hand was up.
Apologies if I missed this already, but is my assumption when you say, Tim, that this allows us to use a more school-wide or district-wide approach, is that just because the whole total went up enough to cross into a threshold where the district's poverty rate is high enough that you don't just target the schools that reach that threshold, now it's across the board?
The overall elementary percentage, for example, 62.8%, that qualifies all buildings.
Okay.
I think 40%, is that the magic number?
If you're at 40%, then that individual school can be served at a school-wide program level, meaning that the funds that our schools are entitled to, which are Title I, Title II, and Title IV. If you're a targeted school, there's really specific rules around how you can spend those funds and who you can spend them on in your building. And so right now, currently in this school year, we have 2 school-wide programs in Bridgeport and Salisbury. And once they reach that 40% mark within the building, they are basically absolved from following those strict rules and can serve all kids in the building, as opposed to Mary Hogan is currently a targeted school, and we have to strictly prove that the kids were served and meet specific eligibility requirements, which when you're trying to build belonging and create school-wide programming is tricky.
I have a question on a different issue in the report. I wasn't sure if we would go back to.
Sure.
Just on the rankings where it was number 2 in college readiness, I think, or, college curriculum breadth index rank. Is that for the entire curriculum in the high school? Is that weighted heavily for the diploma program? Do you have any sense of?
Yeah, I have some sense of it. Schools that offer college level courses typically fare better in this category. And that typically means AP or IB. And some schools will offer a couple AP courses. In our situation, IB is threaded throughout the curriculum, so that provides a stronger, it's a boost.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a way to look at it.
Mary Heather.
Thanks. I've got a couple questions, and I guess I'll start with the data regarding kind of our scorecard. If you will, I guess one of the things that I always struggle with is when percentages are given with low data sets. Well, let me just back up a little bit. Sorry, I'm starting with the wrong thing. Okay, so for the sort of ACSD sort of report card, if you will, obviously the thing that jumps out is the graduation rate, and I know this is something that the high school has already kind of targeted as something that they're working on. I know Caitlin is really passionate about that. And one of the things that I'm thinking, obviously, just to point out, is sort of the obvious, that it underscores the importance of the flexible pathways. But I do sort of wonder if we know what kind of information or data we have on who is not graduating. And I'm just wondering if anything like that can be shared, is there any?
Like right now?
Yeah.
I don't have anything to share right now about that.
When you say who?
I don't mean specifically who, but for example, I'm thinking of even the overlap between this data set and the following data set that we're talking about. Kids who are sort of living in poverty, kids on plans. Do we have data and statistics on, which of our sort of subpopulations are struggling the most with their graduation numbers?
Yeah, I could not rattle them off accurately from here, but Nicole and I have been in meetings with Caitlin and Ben this year where they're precisely looking into that and actually trying to track specific students back in time and going as deep as looking at their academic grades and attendance over the years to look for trends. We could probably find that data and consult with them about where the work stands. At one point we focused on even like calling students, A, to invite them back, and B, to ask them specific targeted questions about what did happen.
Where things happen? I guess because, and I sort of am thinking about the point that you made, Dr. Williams, about, these numbers are for the high school, but obviously there's a lot happening before the high school. And it's kind of an opportunity to look at, what's going on with this particular subset of students before they even get there. And then once they get there, are there paths for them? So I guess it's just something that I would request a sort of more in-depth follow-up on. And then with respect to the poverty numbers, this is where I wanted to just make my point about, percentages and using percentages as a way of evaluating data when you have varied data sets for all the different schools. We've got a percentage reported for example, Lipton, and we know the data set is like less than 40 kids versus MUHS or Mary Hogan or Bridgeport, so there's such a variety. And so I guess I just want to point that out, and I'm wondering about the raw numbers, and certainly, we're getting in that touchy area. If you report actual numbers, you could be identifying folks, but
That's why they're not on there.
yeah. But I just, in terms of comparing percentages, comparing school to school, I just want to express my discomfort with that, because if you look at Mary Hogan, it's only at a 67%. But if you look at Shoreham, for example, it looks like a similar comparison, but when you think about the population of one school over another, you're talking about a hell of a lot more kids that fall into that category. So I just want to point that out. I guess, I just kind of want to follow up on Chip's point about the disparity between some of these numbers. And looking at, assuming that there is some accuracy in this updated number, I just really think as a district, we need to investigate this and how this configuration kind of falls out. It's very sort of American typical socioeconomic segregation, and I just wonder how we as a district can address how we direct resources to those students appropriately. It's such a glaring thing. I guess I just can't let this go without pointing it out. And again, with the percentages, if you calculate how many kids in some of these larger schools, it's a lot of kids. And I just want to make sure that when we're evaluating the data, we're looking at those subsets district-wide.
And for additional context, it may be more helpful to keep in mind that what Courtney was talking about, there's two different factors for us. Most school districts have one of those two factors. So it is very possible, and we don't know this because we don't have their information, it's very possible other school districts also saw a jump because of the new methodology that we see gathering data. So it would probably be unsafe to think that we're the only ones in this boat.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I guess what I'm saying is that doesn't necessarily excuse us from the responsibility of,
Yeah.
of taking a look at
Oh, agreed.
how our resources are distributed among
Agreed.
the different types of populations. And for me, having these two data sets, one right after another, just makes you wonder, like, okay, you know, how
Is there
much
a
of an
correlation?
overlap is there? And, you know, is there a way that we can really be looking at that? Particularly with respect to regulation rates and things like that. Thanks.
So as we're going into our strategic plan implementation for equity, are we looking at data like this, correct? I mean, so that would be, I think, how you pull it in, is now as we're going forward and we're developing our implementation plan for the strategic plan, obviously this has, I would think, bearing.
Yeah, because remember, one of those goals focuses heavily on closing the achievement gap.
Yes.
And this is the kind of information that we need to
Yeah.
consider
Yep.
and understand when you're trying to tackle that.
So any other comments, questions?
Right, thank you. And on the agenda tonight are a handful of appointments and resignations that I'm going to ask the board to approve. And they're listed in the personnel section.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the faculty and staff appointments and resignations?
Like that.
Okay,
So I will move to approve the appointment of William Chapman Hale, Arlene Chaudhary, Laura Emilo, Daniel Morris, Ian Ross, Linda Summers, Carolyn Wood, and to accept the resignation of Elizabeth Burrows, Emily Pottinger, Susan Murkowski, and Nathan Thompson.
thank you. A second? Okay, Ellie, thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? Okay, so all those in favor of approving the appointments and resignations as read, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, one abstention. So the list has been approved.
Thank you very much. And that concludes the superintendent.
Okay, so next we're moving on to the report of the chair. One thing before I start, I just want to mention that there's some upcoming events that I wanted to highlight around graduation. First of all, on June 7th is the final assembly where there's a parade that moves, by Mary Hogan to the athletic center where the awards are given out. And then, of course, June 8th, graduation. So very important that as many of us, if not all of us, attend the graduation. And it would be great if folks could, in fact, attend the day before the awards ceremony as well. Okay, but I just wanted to mention that. The next thing I would like to cover is,
Sorry.
yes,
I just want to point out in the invitations that everyone received, there is an RSVP request, so just make sure that you do RSVP as that so that they know that
for the graduation.
for the graduation, so that they know to reserve those seats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next on our agenda, I would like to spend some time going through the board self-evaluation results, and we can do some discussion on that. In your board pack, you'll find the actual results themselves by question. And what this is a summary of those particular results. And if you could move one more slide. The great thing is 100% of the board participated, and thank you so much for that. That was awesome. For the summarization that we'll be going through, what we did is we combined the disagree and strongly disagree responses as one total to group those together. we also combine the agree and strongly agree responses together as well, to basically be able to compare the results that we're going to be looking at. And we basically didn't include any of the in the middle, don't know, yes or no kind of thing. So the other thing, what I did in the summary is the ranking is that we'll see on those that are in agreement as well as those that need improvement is based on the percentage of board members who responded. So if it was 11 out of 13, it would be 85%. And so all of the questions everyone responded to. So the base for that is 13 is the denominator. Okay, and last but not least, our task, and not this evening, but is to really identify those rules that we'll want to focus on for the upcoming year. When Mark was here, he stressed, you're not going to take on everything, right? So we're going to be looking at these and identifying the top couple that we think is important for us to focus on this year. And we'll actually do that at the board retreat because there's other things that will be happening at the board retreat that folks, need to know about as well as we're trying to figure out, okay, what we were going to commit to here. Okay, so the purpose of today is to get you thinking about it, so that and answer any questions about it, so that when we come to the board retreat, we can then really decide what we want to work on. And once we've done that, that will be incorporated into the work plan as well, the ones that we're going to focus on. And so we'll have, some goals there and objectives. The first one we'll look at is those where the board agreed that the rule was being met. And on this chart is where 50% or more of the board thought this governance standard was in fact being met. So you can see that the very first one, 85% agreed. The board ensures its members are aware of conditions set forth in negotiated agreements and contracts. Whereas it's the next one, 77%, the board undertakes its own continuous learning and development and provides members with opportunities for ongoing training and support to maintain and increase their skills and understanding. Then those were the top two that we had. And even though we have high marks, that doesn't mean there's not room for improvement in the future, right? We always can do better, but those were the top two. The next is the board ensures its members understand and comply with Vermont statute and regulations relevant to board work and public education. That was 69%, so not quite as high. Followed by the board stays apprised of proposed legislation and policy making that may affect its school system and students, and that was 62%. And so we've had lots of practice of doing that over the last couple of weeks and month or so, right? Followed by the board follows an inclusive process to invite and incorporate community input into the vision and goals for the school system. That's 54%. And the final one that's highlighted here is the board discusses, adopts, revises policies on a regular basis to ensure the system is supporting and meeting the needs of every student, and that was 54% as well. So it was above, 50%. The rest of them, of the questions, if you go and look at them, were below 50%. And before we move to the next one, any questions on what you're seeing here, methodology of what was used to do this? Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent. And then we have the areas where the board agreed that the rule is not being met, and 50% or more board members agreed that this is something that is not being met, right? A double negative there. The very first one is 85%. The board annually assesses its performance, including adherence to agreed protocols, processes, and policies. So we don't have a formal process where we evaluate how we are doing as a board. And so that is number one. And tied with that is the board annually reviews whether and/or how its actions and contributions have impacted the school system's success in meeting goals. And that is another one that, we don't have a methodology that we've put in place to do that. And followed by 62%, so a fewer people disagreed, but still a substantial number. The board annually evaluates the effectiveness of community engagement and public communication efforts. Followed by 254%, similar to the other chart. The board ensures its annual budget aligns with stated priorities and provides an equitable distribution of resources to help meet the needs and goals of every student. Followed by the last one, at least annually, the board sets measurable goals and regularly reviews the progress towards those goals. And that's our goals. That's 4 goals for us, as opposed to the district. What we did on this particular chart, because we kind of saw a trend here, we created what was called a bucket, and we then looked at these, and you can see that several of them are around goal setting and reviewing. So the first one, the second one, don't go quite up that far. Thank you. And the very last one, which is goal setting itself. So those are something that potentially could be considered together or not, right? Because they are related. And then the other one is budget alignment with goals. So in this particular case, we haven't really, looked at our, goals as a district and then figured out a methodology for, well, how do we know that the budget aligns to those? And so that's another area that, will be interesting as well. One thing at the retreat, we are in fact going to have a presentation and some discussion on equity-based budgeting. So that could actually influence this particular governance rule as well. Any questions on any of these?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Brian.
I'm wondering if, I think it's called 113.2.1. And on the other side is 113.3.1. I'm wondering if they are in disagreement.
Which ones, the first two?
No,
The top one on this table, and you can scroll up.
Okay, and then top one on the other table,
Well, I don't know if it's the top one. Well,
the bottom one, the policies.
yeah, I'm wondering whether the results of both of these make sense.
Well, we do in fact have a policy committee, right? And the policy committee, meets regularly and looks at the recommendations from the School Board Association and brings those forward to us to adopt. So when you look at it just from that perspective, you could see that, yeah, we're doing that. But if you notice, it's a 54%. Right, so there's obviously still room for improvement.
Right, what I'm wondering is where it says 54%, whether you, in what's written here, you have to assume that there's been an assessment. And if there has been an assessment,
Okay,
then that doesn't line up with the top one on the previous page, where there was also an assessment.
I see what you mean. The fact that it says to ensure the system is supporting and meeting the needs of every student.
Yeah, there hasn't been an assessment there.
Right, and okay, got it.
Thank you.
Mary Heather.
I was just gonna point out that the the percentages are just the number of board members who agree or disagree
Right,
that that rule has been met, so.
right.
That's all.
Yeah, and in this case, it was just above 50%. So it was probably, what, 7 versus 6?
Right.
Right? And there could have, in fact, been some that actually didn't, that said agree or neither agree or disagree. We could go back and look at that data. Ellen.
I wasn't sure who looked at the results altogether, but to all of you, whoever that may have been, I'm not sure if it's the executive committee, were there any of these responses where the neutral response felt worse than better? I mean, I know it's neutral, but there are some where it's kind of a significant number of respondents where then either agree or disagree. So are there any where that felt kind of like a blow?
Right, and we did look at it at that level of detail, and so that's something, before we decide what we're gonna work on, that's probably a good point, to actually look at that, and as well, which I can do. Mary Heather.
I'll just clarify how I looked at it, and so I can't speak for Suzanne and Barb, but I think just initially it was in terms of just the goal of identifying which of these rules kind of rose to the top.
Right.
As things that we might, as a full board, want to work on. It seemed like the best approach would be to identify those rules for which most of the board were in agreement that we were not meeting. Right. Those were kind of the most urgent, if you will, in terms of our non-compliance with the standard, and that we had the most agreement as a board that was the case. And so that was kind of how I looked at the data. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's how I looked at it as well. It was just what rose to the top.
Low hanging fruit.
I totally get that. I just wasn't sure if like there was a gut reaction to, I would have hoped that there would be more, not just agreement, but just more clarity either way. Because whenever you've got that neutral option and a lot of people are in neutral, it begs a million questions.
Right. And one thing to keep in mind is we have to, over time, adopt all these rules, right? And so the purpose of this was to identify what were those couple rules that we know everyone is pretty much in agreement that we're not meeting that. And then once we've focused on those, next year we can pick up a couple more. And we really do need to be looking at every single one of them. And one of the things that's on here where we don't do evaluation, right? That could be factored in to board evaluation in the future to see, well, how have we done? And we will do this survey again, right? So now we have a benchmark. So that will also be able to be used in the future to see, have we moved? So maybe possibly some of the work that we will be doing over the course of the next year will affect some of the ones that we're not even working on, right? So it's just really trying to find what is something that concrete that we should be working on now. Go ahead, Steve.
So this is basically an opinion poll, and it's a subjective evaluation of these standards. Is there any way to have someone more objectively come in and say, you guys are meeting this or you're not meeting this? I mean, it's us saying we are meeting it or not meeting it, rather than someone with an objective perspective saying, yeah, you guys really aren't doing this thing, or you are doing this thing well, you just don't think you are. I mean, it's great. It's a great data point. It might be more helpful if we had something that we were a little less, had a dog in the fight.
Right. And so some of these are pretty obvious that we're not doing them, right? And maybe as we focus on this more, governance in the future, that makes a lot of sense. But I think right now we don't do board self-evaluation, right? And we're not doing many of the things that are specified here. And, maybe you could question that some of the ones where we were ranked high, maybe they're not quite as high. Who knows? But we're not gonna take on 100% of everything this particular year. So I'm hoping kind of this method to help us identify what we want to work on makes sense. But I'm open to other methods as well. I'm definitely open to other methods. Chip.
In commenting on Steve's about an outside or a less subjective approach, I mean, I found some of the questions, even though I've been on boards a long time, I couldn't answer. And so, to Ellen's point about being neutral, what does neutral mean?
Right.
And the other point I would make is that this year, Laura was the only new member of our board taking this test. But in other years, we've had 4 new members. And then before that, and if you look back, a lot of the board has not been on the board for a very long time. So albeit this will be a long process going forward, it's also a long process going back and being able to interpret it. So I understand where we all sit, and I understand why we're doing it. But to Steve's point, I don't know in our subjective evaluation whether that's, other than pointing out the really outlying positives or negative numbers, that it's very helpful, but so be it.
And so I think this is maybe good feedback to the Vermont School Board Association as well, because this is a tool that they provided us to help us. I would be happy to, take that back to Deb, and we also have our rep here, Suzanne.
I think that'd be helpful.
So, one thing I want to say is the VSBA is currently, and has been working for at least a year now, on scoring rubrics for these standards. We won't see them, their first stab at them until June 12th. So they admitted at our VSBA meeting that these are very difficult ones to score and to give words to, well, we're not really doing it, so we get a 1, or yes, we're really excelling in it, so we're over here in the 4 categories, of giving the words to each of those buckets for every single one of these has been very challenging, and they said they still have more work to do, but they are working on establishing some parameters for boards.
Excellent. Thank you, Suzanne. I think that would help. Jason?
I would like to see like priority in here, like what's more important to you as a board member? Like, you might not be doing it, but if it's not important to you, then you shouldn't be doing it, or shouldn't focus on it this year.
And ultimately, we don't have a choice that we need to do it. I mean, but it could help with the priority of what we do sooner than something else. And, this is things that we can think about too, and we're not going to select which ones tonight that we're gonna work on. So if in fact there is something that you feel very passionate about that we need to work on, we'll have that discussion. But in the end, we need to pare down the list so that we're not trying to work on every single one of them. And what is gonna give us really the biggest bang, as Jason said, for our buck this coming year. And what I do have, and I'd be happy to share with you, I put the results into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can basically filter based on, the responses. So I would be happy to send that spreadsheet out to folks if that would be useful, so you could do your own what ifs. And then, look at those that are more neutral, right? Either agree or disagree. So I'd be happy to do that as well. Ellen? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? Good discussion, though. I mean, this is great. Laura?
It strikes me that some of these are sort of more lower hanging fruit than others, right? Developing a way to sort of do a self-assessment of our efficacy is maybe a little easier like engaging the community in a more meaningful discussion or, how do we do that? So it, I think it gives us a place where we can maybe tackle some of them and also have some longer term goals
Right.
with some other ones.
Right, yeah, because in the end, yeah, very good point. In the end, over time, we do need to adopt things, right? And it's going to be something that we need to be constantly taking a look at. Even though we might be doing something well now, that doesn't mean we're going to be doing it well next year. So it needs to be at the forefront of part of our evaluation of us as a board. And it helps to meet that goal, because we're actually talking about it. Mary Heather.
Do you mind sharing your thinking about the timeframe for making our selection? Because, the other thing that we've been kind of working on just as an executive committee too is setting up a work plan for the board, which then kind of has a domino effect for work plans for committees and things like that. So what do you all think about, or what are you thinking in terms of like when we do want to make our selection about what we're working on?
I would love to be able to do this at the retreat. I mean, the reason, and if we have time, and if not, then that following meeting after the retreat, because there will be more information that comes into the picture and the work plan, that kind of thing. So I think it's important to really see everything that's in front of us before we make commitments. So hopefully the retreat, if in fact we can't quite decide then, I would then say the first board meeting in June, I would put it on the agenda so that we can really finalize the work plan. Thank you. Anything else? Great, thank you so much. Okay, the next item, and you can stop sharing this. I just wanted to give a real quick update. Last Thursday, we had a meeting on the retreat and really laying out the day for the retreat. And Dr. Baker, Dr. Williams, Nicole, Emily, Matt got together and finalized the plans for June 1st. And the real interesting thing is June 1st is Dr. Baker's first day. So such a timing, we couldn't have planned it better. And so as a result of that, for that first hour, we decided it would really be a good opportunity for us to focus on the way we all work together, right? Between, a new superintendent and her team, right? As well as the board, and her team is going to be there, right? So I think that'll be awesome. And as I mentioned previously, we will have an equity discussion on equity-based budgeting. Lunch will be provided, and our food services is available to provide that. Thinking about this a little bit, I was, when I talked to Darcy, I was thinking that we could probably have salad, sandwich fixings, so people could kind of make their sandwiches, as well as maybe a soup and dessert. Does that sound good to folks? And not make it too complicated? But that way, depending on folks' dietary needs, that kind of thing, the sandwiches wouldn't be already pre-made or whatever. You can make your own as needed. So that's, kind of what I had in my head. I haven't quite decided if I haven't made sorbet yet this year. I know the last retreat, I actually had sorbet there. I'm not promising yet. I would love to be able to do that. Little cups of sorbet as well. The logistics, and then the afternoon after lunch, it's going to be focused on the strategic plan for equity and what the team has learned and wants to share with us, and what they need from us as well in order to move forward. So it should be exciting. I think it'll be really interesting to see what folks have come up with and looking really forward to it. And I'm glad that the whole team is going to be there and taking time out and giving us their Saturday. So that's pretty awesome. And just the logistics, just so everyone knows, Hannaford Career Center, we're going to be there starting at 9:30 and most likely by 3 p.m. And we'll make sure there's coffee and some little bit of kind of small foods available right from the beginning, say at 9:15, and then lunch. And I'm thinking, that's about all I have at this point in time. Any questions? Mary Heather, and then Alan.
Just wanted to kind of point out that our discussion just about this, the governance standards and, maybe wanting to squeeze that in there if there's
Yeah.
time. So I don't know if there will be time, but just
Right.
want to have that on the radar.
Yeah, exactly. And Ellen.
Do you need us to do anything in preparation for it? Is there something we should be reading or thinking about? Or?
I don't think so. I'm looking at Dr. Baker here. War and Peace, yes. Please, thank you.
Maybe refresh on the strategic.
And just get a good night's sleep and, go, and fresh and, really ready to engage and work together. I think is my best advice.
You didn't know we meet every Saturday, right?
I think a bunch of us would be doing that same, same look.
Would it be worth though, you just said this, Mary Heather, but like all of us reviewing the strategic plan?
That would be
Just
great.
coming
I
in
mean,
fresh on that.
that'll be part of it, just orient, okay, here's what the goals and the objectives and the targets were. But yes, please. The more familiar and fresh that is in our minds, the better. And thank you.
So we'll also have materials for you, with the idea being that it's understandable that, that's not something you think about every day in your daily life. So there'll be materials provided that relate to these topics. We'll be well supported.
And the retreat is really a beginning, right? It's really a beginning. So based on what we can accomplish at the retreat, it can in fact, or could in fact, drive agendas for the future where we need to drill down more in a particular area. So, I think it's going to be a long day, right? So I'm looking forward to it, and there will be more dialogue, I'm sure, after. We're not just going to have the retreat, put it on the shelf, and then move forward. This is going to be something that really drives how we are going forward. It's really important. Okay, anything else on either of those topics? If not, we will move forward. So the next item is report of the board, and I'm gonna, Tricia does have something.
Yeah, just real quick, we are about to send out our spring school board newsletter. So it's included in our board meeting materials so that you guys could all give it a look. And if you could get me any feedback, comments, questions, things that you would like me to switch, we are committing to switch by the end of the week, that would be fabulous. And as we were talking about communications and engagement with the public, this is one of our main forms of public communication. So please do keep that in mind as you're looking through it and as you're putting together your comments for our.
Where does this go? So I did this, report comes together, community meeting list. Days all blurred together. And there was numerous, way too many questions about school board communication. So I'm just wondering, where does this go? Does this just go like to principals and then out to student families from there? Does this go to select board offices? offices, town offices as well, or how far do we send this out?
What we've done in the past is, so it goes out to everyone who is signed up to ACSD, to receive ACSD newsletters. So typically, often what we've done in the past is it would go out as a separate email, and then Emily also tags it onto the district newsletter. Often it's also in our weekly updates that principals send out. And we also do send it, we post it on our website, we put it in Front Porch Forum. I don't know that it's, I really have to ask Emily actually whether it goes to select board and stuff like that, just in terms of regular communications. I don't know if they're on the list or not, but that's something we can follow up on.
Okay. A lot of, because people were just, saying that they don't hear anything from the school board. So, and these were people new to the community, some that have kids, some that don't. And so it was just a cross mesh with individuals. So I told them I would ask a question about where our correspondence.
I mean,
goes
always
when you
there's
get that.
something, the latest correspondence is on the website, so that's always a good bet to direct people to.
Well, that's what
In terms of like our helpful and our regular, that's been, I think, the committee's ongoing struggles to figure out how to reach people who are not already in ACSD orbit.
Right.
But to do it in a cost-effective, manner, efficient and effective manner, so.
So just a question, that's all.
Yeah.
I told them I would bring it forward.
Laura?
So the town, when you go to vote, they have usually a sign-up table that's like, if you want to sign up for the town listserv, put your name down here. So that may be something we should consider for the next voting cycle, is having a board with some signups.
Gets more people on our list. The other thing I was gonna, possibly suggest, and I'm not aware of what other towns do, but over the last several years, I know my town has, worked hard at coming up with an email list for the town. And so one option could be to send it to the town clerk, right? And request that they send it out using their email list. And then it might be a little broader reach that way.
Yeah, I know that's been investigated, and I know there's varying degrees of sophistication and existence of those lists depending on which town you're in. So,
So, all this room for improvement, as we were talking about previously, right? And if folks have ideas, based on their town, whatever, please let the communication and engagement committee know, your thoughts on that. They would be, I'm sure, most happy to hear from you. Yes, please.
We do have our next regular meeting next week.
Okay, excellent. Anything else from any of the other committees at this time? This is not every committee listed, but if in fact your committee has something that you want to bring forward, please let me know and let us know. Other than negotiations, because we have a.
Which is coming later.
Yeah, which is coming later.
When is this update due to go out?
So I'm hoping that we will finalize it at our next meeting and give it that green light.
Okay. So the next agenda item is public comment on any topic. And there's still no public in the room. Could we check once again to see if we have any public on Zoom? So if in fact, this is our moment to invite public to comment on any topic. If anyone is interested, they could raise their Zoom hand. Okay, so then we will continue moving forward. Tonight, we have an executive session for person, for per 1 VSA section 313A1. So at this time, if I could have a motion to enter executive session per VSA section 313A1 for contract negotiations.
Suzanne's hand is up.
Okay, Suzanne,
I move that we go into executive session for 1 VSA section 313A1 negotiations.
Second.
in a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I think you've got to say who's invited to stay.
Yes.
It is part of the public. So
Right. Yeah, so I would like to invite Dr. Baker to stay
I
and
think he was voting.
Matt, and Matt as well.
Yes.
We have to check to make sure Jamie's
And
is up for a
Jamie?
vote in that question.
Jamie, do you have a question? Or is that a vote?
Yeah, did someone just send the link for the executive session Zoom?
Oh, we need to create one and send it to him.
Okay.
Or what about if we just call them on the phone?
Or we could, either one. Could we just call you?
Fine, honestly, my phone is on 7%.
Okay.
It's easy
So,
for you.
We'll create,
Easy enough to do.
we'll create a quick link
Yeah.
so that you can join us.
Thank you.
Yes.
See you soon.
See you soon, Jamie. Matt, do you know what to do?
You just have to set up a meeting.
So if you're
I got a barber, I can help you out with
Yeah.
that if you want us to just.
So go under meeting. I'm so sorry. I didn't make sure we
Do
did
sign
it.
in. You should already be signed in though.
Kurt, there is scheduled to be a vote afterwards, so I don't.
Yeah, I talked to Barb about it.
Oh, okay.
So he's going to make sure everything is
Yep.
shut down.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Yeah. We're on the live stream.
We've already talked about that.
Okay, it happens once
Does that apply to everything?
And
I mean,
you can let everything
some
default, so
things
you
maybe
can
one.
do just a save. And then it will, there's the invite link, and you can copy it. If you go all the way to the right,
Audio's good.
and we can send that to, because the only one is Jamie.
Kurt, do you want to cut the audio?
Yeah, so camera's off. There's no audio here. I'm double checking with the live stream. That's still your Zoom.
Zoom? This is the
No,
live stream.
This is live stream from YouTube.
it's not our Zoom.
Thank you, Jason.
No problem.
Turn it